Okay, in this video I'm going to make a Python file that connects to a database and gets some information and puts it up on the screen like a leaderboard, like a sports leaderboard. I've made a lot of videos recently where I've shown how to connect to a database and how to send information to the database, but not so many that get information from there and then display it back on the screen. So that's what this one's gonna do. And obviously I need to do the database section as well, so that if you haven't watched one of the other videos, you're getting both parts. I'm using Python. We're going to be using, I'm doing this in idle. You can do it in Visual Studio Code, you can do it in whatever you like, but I'm doing it in Python, in the standard idle that comes with Python. We're going to use the Tkinter library, and we'll use a SQLite 3 database to attach to it. So let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is just put a comment in. I always teach the students to put comments in about what their file is, what it does. So this is going to be a leaderboard using Python and Tkinter and SQL, SQLite 3 or SQL. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to create a leaderboard using Python and Tkinter and SQL and from a database. So the first thing we really need to do is we need to import these libraries. So we're going to import Tkinter as TK. But I'm also going to import from Tkinter, import TTK. Now, TTK is like a more stylized version of Tkinter. So if you have issues with buttons, if you have issues with the way that it looks on the screen, that sort of stuff, TTK can address those things a little bit differently. So I'm just importing that as a separate library. Right, SQL Lite 3, that's going to be our connection to our database. Now, like I said, I don't really want to spend a lot of time on how to set the database up. We've done that, but I do need to do it, and I want to put some fake data in there as well, so that when we make our leaderboard, some actual data comes up on the screen, right? So first thing I'm going to do is create a variable called con, and I'm going to say connect to SQLite 3 and connect. That's what I want it to do. And the database we'll call, let's call it leaderboard.db. Right, so that's going to be a leaderboard database. Okay. Now, once we connect to that, let's go cursor. Cursor means we can send commands to the database. Okay, and if you're really worried about this, watch a few of the other videos about connecting to a database. That'll give you a bit more definition. But essentially, cursor says connect to the database, and the things that we write in here in SQL, run those commands on the database. It's like, you know, the flashing cursor on a screen. Well, it's like having that flashing cursor in the database and then running those commands, right? Now, let's first of all check to see if the tables and everything are already created, right? So let's do cursor dot execute, which means run this command. Let's put in a SQL command in here, 6 inverted commas, and my command that I want to run is create table if not exists. So in other words, if the table doesn't exist, I want you to create a table called teams, and we better set out the structure of this table. How do I want the table? Well, I always want to have an ID, and I want that to be an integer as a primary key, and I want it to auto increment. And I made a typo in there. Primary key. Okay, so I want there to be an ID on the table that is an integer, a whole number, negative or positive. That's a primary key, so it's a unique identifier on the table, and it automatically increases one by one without me having to tell it to increase. So every time we add some information, it creates a new ID automatically. Now we're going to want to have the team name, underscore, and we could have that as text. Or you could have as varchar. Either one would be fine. Either one's fine, right? For the purpose of doing this quickly, I'm just going to leave it as text. Right, we're going to have the wins, which is an integer. We'll have the losses, which is an integer. And then let's have the overall points, I don't know, on the table. and that can be an integer as well. And essentially that's all we need to have, right? So that's what we need to have as our command. So this will get the cursor on the SQL database, and it'll execute this section of code in here, which will create a table if the table doesn't already exist, right? Now we want to commit those changes, so we go to the connection and commit the changes. That's it. So that should do the database section of it. And like I said, I've run through that really pretty quickly, just so that we make sure that we've got the setup and it's ready to go. The point of this tutorial is to how to get the data off the database, not to make it, right? Now let's insert some data. Let's just insert some fake data so that our database works, right? So let's do cursor dot execute. Inverted commas, let's do select count, in brackets everything from teams. Teams lowercase. So teams is the table we've just made, okay? Now, what this is doing is essentially it's going through and counting how many things are in the database. I mean, that's the simple answer is how many items are in the database. Cursor, C-U-R-S-O-R, dot fetch once, fetch one, and let's put it into position 0. Okay, so what this is doing is this is going to go onto the database, it's going to go to the teams, and it's going to count how many items are in the database, and then it's going to store that count in this count variable here, right? So it's going to go and get it, and it's going to store it in this count variable here. Now, let's go and start entering some information. If count is exactly equal to 0. So what I'm saying is if there is nothing in the database, right? So if the count, so it's gone through, it's counted how many things are in the database. At the moment, there's nothing, right? So if the count is equal to nothing, then we're going to put our starter teams in, right? So let's go starter teams is equal to, let's do an array, square brackets, and then let's put in, let's put in 5 teams, say, right? So I'm creating, so in other words, what I'm doing, this is an if statement too, if. What I'm doing here is I'm creating an array that I'm going to put 5 teams in. And I'm going to say here, if the count is 0, so there's no teams currently in our database, then I'm going to say insert all of these teams in this array into the database. I'm going to say put them in so that we've got a starting amount of teams so that we can actually display something on the screen. It's pointless creating a leaderboard if we're not actually going to display something on the screen. Right, so let's start with this structure. The name of the team, comma, the points, that's wins, losses, and points in total. And then we're going to put the next one in. So essentially that's going to be the structure for my 5 teams. So I'm just going to hit return, Command V, return, Command V, return, Command V, return, Command V. Okay, so that's going to be my 5 teams. Now, my first team, I'm going to call this the Lions. And let's give them 8 wins, 2 losses, 24 points. Okay, let's go with my next team. My next team is going to be called the Tigers. Let's give them 6 wins, 4 losses, and 18. 3 points a win. Okay, let's go with Eagles. And the Eagles are going to get 9 wins, 1 loss, 3 nines, 27 points. Perfect, good. Next one, let's put in the Sharks. And let's give them 5 wins, nothing for a loss, 5 losses, and 15 points total. And the last one, let's put in the Wolves. All right, so we get a nice mix of little creatures there. 7 animals, 3 7's 21, 21 points. Right, so that's the array of things that I want to put into the database, but I haven't put in yet. I've just said, if the count equals 0, here's my array that we might put things in, that we might enter into the database. So we need to actually tell it to execute all of these things. So we need the cursor, and we want to execute but we want to execute many, not just execute. So I'm going to write execute many, and 3 sets of inverted commas, another 3 sets of inverted commas. Now I put my SQL in here, and I say insert into teams table. And what I want, where do I want to put them? I want to put them as team. Now you need to make sure you get this exactly the same as the way you set it up here. So team name, comma, wins. Did I put plural? Yeah, wins, losses, point. So I probably should have put points plural there. So let's make that points plural there. So let's make sure we do it down here as points as well. Wins, comma, losses, comma, points. So you're choosing the right columns in the table to enter your information into. You haven't entered anything yet, you're just choosing the correct columns to put information into. Now the values that you're going to put into those columns are going to be 5 values. So let's put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 question marks separated by a comma. Okay, and where do we get that information from? We get it from, so that's the end of the SQL section there. We get it from our array called starter teams. Close the bracket. Okay, so in other words, what's this saying is, go to the database, go to the teams table, look at the columns team name, wins, losses, points, and you're going to put in the variables here. Team names, wins, losses, points. I've probably got one too many question marks there, I do. Right, so that's what you're going to enter in, 4 pieces of information. Now, where are you going to get that information? You're going to go to this array and you're going to see 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of information. So that's how it's going to put it into the database. And of course, we want to commit this change, right? So connection.commit. Okay, so now we've entered the database. So the first, 10 minutes of this video has been setting up our database and putting information in there. Now we want to actually start making our GUI, and now we want to actually start displaying that information. And this is the bit that we really want to get to. Now, when I make a GUI, I often call it window .tk capital TK. All right, this is how I normally do my window. And normally I'll put a comment in here as well, right? So put a comment here, GUI starts here. Okay, and I like to do that because I think it's good practice. Quite often on the internet, if you go through and you watch how other people have created things, they might use main window like that, or, which I do sometimes, I use main window, or one, especially for those people who are using ChatGPT to help them, it often uses root, right? So it uses root as the way to say it. Now, I don't like that. I like using the word window because I feel like it tells me more about what the program is and more what it does. But I'm just telling you this, that if you see root there, or if you see something different in there, it's still going to create a Tkinter window. It's still making the Tkinter window. It's just they've named that variable something different. Now I'm going to leave it as window. Window is the way that I like to do it. But if you see it as root, you know what it is, right? So let's go window dot title. Now this, every time we make a GUI, I do this exactly the same way. So if you've seen me make a GUI before, you'll know this is pretty much exactly the way I always do it. Right, I do leaderboard. There's my title. Now I'm going to do window dot geometry. And if you've been watching my videos, you'll know I made a mistake in the geometry a few videos back where I used a capital X. You must have a lowercase x, otherwise it's not going to work, right? So there's just a little learning point. Let's put in a background. Let's put in. I'm going to use like a blue color as the background. I think like a electric blue. Let's go with hash. Now remember, when you're looking at RGB colors, R is the first 2 numbers, B is the second 2 numbers, and then G is the second 2 numbers, and B is the last 2 numbers, right? So I don't want it to be very random. 0047 AB. Now I'm not doing that randomly. I looked up that number for an electric blue number, and what I'm saying is that represents the red, that represents the amount of green, and that represents the amount of blue. And you can see the A, B, they're the highest two numbers, so it's going to be saturated with more blue. It's going to have a little bit of green in it, but it's going to be more blue, right? So that's how we work out the RGB color. Right, now I want to put a title. Again, this is the way I always do it. Title label equals TK with a capital label, and then we put in our brackets. We put in where we're going to store this. We're going to store this in window. We're going to display it in the window. Sorry, not store it. We're going to display it in the window. We want to have some text, and we want the text to say, let's call it Mayland World Cup Leaderboard. All right, so we'll pretend it's like a World Cup. I haven't chosen a sport. I'm just going to call it Mayland World Cup. All right, now let's put in a font. Font equals brackets Arial, comma 22 point, comma bold. It's a heading, right? So we want it to be a heading. Okay, and then let's put in a background color for that. Let's put in the same background color so it doesn't look like it's got this weird box around the text. We want to just make sure it's got the same background color equals, in fact, let's just copy that. Now if I copy that, I'll be able to use it 3 or 4 times down through this program. So I've just copied that in there. And then let's make the foreground, which is the actual font color, let's make that, let's make it gold. Yellow would have done, but gold will do. Gold sounds good. It's a World Cup, right? Okay, and then we want to pack that title. So we just go title underscore label dot pack. And let's move it down from the top of the screen. So let's pad the y-axis by 20. Okay, so now I'm going to have a title in my GUI. So that's the first section. Now we want to get to the place where we're starting to make the table, right? And this is the whole point of the video, is making a table and getting information and putting it on the table. So let's call this a table underscore frame. Or notice it's all lowercase, but when you get to the Takinta part, you have to have the capital letter, right? So tk.frame. So this is like a, it says, like it's a frame that's going to be in the window that is holding something in place. It's like a box within the window, like a frame within a window that holds a painting. There's a frame within this window that's going to hold our table information. Okay, so that's kind of what frame means. Right, let's go table frame underscore frame. So we're making the frame first, and we're packing that on the screen. And let's pad that down from the heading, pad by the y-axis. Let's pad that 10, right? So we've made a frame. Now we want to start to put things into that frame, okay? So let's go through and say we want to do the 4 columns across the top. And the columns, we want to do what's called a tree view, right? So let's go leaderboard equals, and this is where we want to get into something that looks a little bit different and maybe is a little bit more than just the standard Takinta. We want this to be a little bit more stylish and a little bit more visually appealing, right? So this is where we're using TTK, right? So instead of doing TK.frame, here I'm doing TTK, which is like a more stylized version. And we're going to do tree view, and we do our brackets, and we say what do we want in our stylized tree view. Now the first thing, normally when we're making something, we say, like for example the label, we say place this in the window. But we're not going to do that this time. We're going to place this tree view inside the table frame. So we've made this frame, we've made this border, so we want to put our tree view, our table, we want to put it inside this frame. So that's the first little thing I want to do, so table frame, put it in there. And I want to have columns. And I want the columns to equal to the names 2, 3, 4. All right, the names of our columns to match our database. So we know in our database we had team name, win, losses, points. So in here, I'm going to put team. I'm not going to put team underscore name. I'll just put team, wins, losses, and points. Now, if you're doing something different, you might have a player name, and then you might have the points they scored, the rebounds, the assists, the whatever. However you want to create the table, that's up to you. I'm just doing it as a leaderboard, like a sports competition leaderboard. Now, I want to show those headings on my table, and let's give it some height. Now, if I've come down pad 10, the height of my text could be, or the height of my window could be 10 as well. The box where these headings are could be the size 10 as well. All right, so there we go. That's going to create my leaderboard. Now, this headings thing here, it says show headings. These are the names of my columns. Now I want to show these headings. Now, how would I do that? I would go to here and I would get the leaderboard, which is the variable I've created up here, and I'm going to add the headings to the leaderboard. Okay, so I'm going to go heading, not headings, and I'm going to say for the heading of team, the text that I want actually to be seen in that column. So this creates the columns, but the text that's going to be shown in that column, we want it to be something like team name. Okay, so that makes sense. We've created the headings, we've created the columns, we've named the columns, now we're putting the text onto the columns that we've created, right? So that makes sense. Okay, so this next one, we're going to call it wins. So in the wins column, we're going to write the word wins. Pretty technical. In the losses column, we're going to write the word losses. So we're adding the text that will be displayed into the columns. We're not just creating the columns, we're adding the actual text that's going to be displayed on there as well, right? And we'll put in here points. Okay, we've done that. So that's set up our headings to be on each column, right? Now we want to set up the column, the way the text is displayed. So for example, if you go to the database and you collect the name of our first team, right? So let's go and get our first team name, which is going to be Lions. If we collect the word Lions, how do we want the word Lions to be displayed? Well, we want the word Lions to be in the team section. We want the wins to be in the wins column, the losses to be in the losses column, the points to be in the points column. But how do you want the text? Do you want the text over on the left-hand side? Do you want the text right bang in the middle? Do you want it over the right-hand side? Do you want the width of these three boxes to be the same width of the team box where the name is? So you have to actually design the way the table's going to look a little bit. So you need to design the columns. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this one here where I've got this heading, and I'm going to paste it here. I'm going to change something. So instead of designing the headings, now I'm going to design the column. What does the column actually look like? And we don't need this, because we've already done the heading. So we've got our leaderboard column, and we're going to be editing or tweaking the team column, what we created up here, and we want it to have a width of, let's make this width pretty big because we might have longer team names that are added. So let's make it 250, and let's put anchor, which means where is it going to be in our table structure? Where's it going to be placed? Let's put everything that comes in centered, right? So we want it to be in the center. Now let's do the same for the next three. 1, 2, 3. So our wins column. Now, I want you to think about this. The team's name is going to be a word, right? And the word could have a whole pile of characters, lots of different characters in there. But these ones are really only going to be 1 or 2 numbers. So these columns do not need to be 250 wide. In fact, let's just make them 100 pixels wide, right? So all of these really only need to be 100 pixels wide because that's enough to hold 2 characters. So let's make this losses, and let's make this one points. Okay, so the first one's wider because it's going to have a word in there, and the next 3 are much narrower because they're just going to have 1 or 2 characters, 1 or 2 numbers in there. All of it's going to be centered, so the numbers will be in the center of the column, and they'll be centered nicely, and that's the style that we want to use. That's the way that I want my table to lay out and to look like. Now, we also want to style the colors and the background and what it's all going to look like. So we've created this leaderboard, we've created the way the headings are going to be, we've created the width and that sort of stuff, but we haven't given it any style. So let's give it some style. And let's say the style that we're going to use is TTK, the new version, style. Okay, so we're going to give it some style. Now we've created that variable, so let's use that variable. Style dot, the theme we're going to use is whatever the default system theme is. We don't really need to change the theme. And if you want to change this theme, you could go on and look what are different TTK different TTK themes that you possibly could use. I think there's one called Aqua, or there's one called I don't know, something like. You can go through and change them. I never change it, just leave it as is. Now, I want to tweak the way that it looks, right? So I'm going to use this variable style, and I'm going to configure it. And in my configuration of this, the section that I want to configure is going to be the tree view. So we're going to be styling the tree view section, okay, first. That's the first bit. And we're going to put in a background. Now, this is something that's different with TK and TTK. With TK, it uses BG and FG. With TTK, you use the full word background and the full word foreground. It's just one of those strange little things that's just a bit different between TK and TTK. It's one of those things that's just you're going to write the full word background instead of just BG and FG like here. Now I'm going to get this color here because I don't want it to be multicolored. I don't want it to be all crazy, that sort of stuff. I really kind of only want it to be the same colors, right? But I'm still going to put it in. It's good practice anyway. It means that if it's overwritten by something else, well then this will make sure that it's correct, right? So let's put in foreground. In the foreground here, I want the text to be, if I've got a blue background, I want the text to be white. Okay, and let's go through and do some other styling. I want the height of my rows, row height. This is rows now, not columns. This is how high the rows are going to be. Let's make it 30 pixels. Let's go for my background inside each of the cells. So not the background of the overall table, but the background inside each of the cells, inside each of the fields, right? They call that field background. And I want that to be the same color that we've been using, the electric blue. And the font I want to use, let's stay consistent with what we've been doing. Let's make it Arial. And it doesn't need to be anywhere near as big as our heading. Let's just make it 12 point, right? So 12 point Arial. So that's going to style the way that the table starts to look, all right? That's the general table, the overall table of the tree view. That's what it's called, the way that the general table looks. Now, you might want to style the heading specifically, all right? No, let's do it. Let's style the heading specifically. Let's copy this. Hit return. I'm going to do style configure and tree view, except I'm going to do the tree view. I'm going to do the heading. So let's style the tree view heading. Now, I want the background to stay that color. I want the foreground. Let's make the writing black so you can see that there's a difference. My row height. Do I need the row height? Yeah, let's leave the row height. Why not? I don't need the field background. Let's change the font because this is going to be the heading section. So let's make the font a little bit bigger. Let's make it 14 points. And let's make it bold because it's going to be a heading. Okay, is there anything else I need there? I've got my font, I've got my foreground, I've got my background, I've left the row height. I'm not sure if I need the row height, but let's just leave that there as well. Okay. Great, so now I've styled the heading section. So not only have I styled all of the sections where all the data is going to come in, I've actually made a specific style just for the heading section as well, right? And it's going to be the same electric blue, except it'll have black at the top rather than have white writing all the way through it. Okay, what else do I need to style? No, I need to tell this theme that I'm going to use these two styles, right? So let's do that. Let's go style.map, which means go and get this style. This is what I'm mapping out how I want you to make it look. And I want you to map out the tree view. So I want you to add these special features, this customization to my tree view. So I'm telling it that background equals, I'm using an array here, and we go the selected, and let's go hash 347083, close inverted commas. Right, that needs to be color. Right. So I'll just explain this little section in here, this map section, because this is an interesting little thing. You've got your configuration here, right? So we're laying out our tree view. We're giving it a electric blue background with white writing, all that sort of stuff. That's where the data is going to be. We've got this heading that's going to have also the electric blue, but it's going to have black writing on it as well. To map is to also say, if the user comes in and clicks in part of these boxes, if they click on a piece of data or a team name, or if they click on any part of either one of these, what's going to happen? And so that'll be the area that they select, and we'll put in a different color in here. They're going to change colors. So instead of having this electric blue section here, it's like a highlighter. This is probably the best example. It's like a highlighter. You click somewhere on the table, it'll highlight a separate color so that you know that you're interacting with that section of the table, right? So it's like, let's highlight, if we select an area, we're highlighting an area, and let's make the color different so the person knows that that area is actually being selected. I suppose that's probably the best definition of the map section. So let's go with that. We want to have this data come up and display on the screen. We want it to load the data from the database. So to do that, we're going to have a function that's going to load this data from the database. So at the moment, we're saying, okay, we've put some fake data in here. We've put some pretend teams in here. We've inserted them into a table. We've started to create this GUI to see what it's going to look like, and it's going to look pretty good. But we haven't actually said go and get the data, right? So we better do that. We better say let's go and get the data. So let's define a function, and let's call this load leaderboard. So it's going to load the data from the database, right? Load the leaderboard. Now, the first thing we want to do is we want to be thinking long term. You want to be thinking this program is not going to be run once. It's going to be run multiple times. And if it's a leaderboard, each week when the teams play each other, or each time the round happens, you're going to be updating the information on the database, and therefore you want the leaderboard to update as well. So the first thing you really want to do is you want to make sure that everything that's currently on the leaderboard is removed, right? That there's nothing on there, so that you can, every time it goes and runs a query from the database, it gives you a fresh set of data. So let's go for row in the current leaderboard. Let's get everything from there. Let's call it get children. So everything that's currently being displayed on the leaderboard, go and get that. Oops, put a colon at the end of that line. Right, and let's delete it. So let's go. Delete the row. Okay, so it's not deleting the structure, it's not deleting the way we've laid this out. What that's going to do is going to go through and delete any data that's currently being viewed on the leaderboard, right? Now, I know this doesn't seem to make any sense because we haven't put anything on the leaderboard yet, but if you're thinking long term, if you're thinking after you've used this program for a while, every single week that you update, you want to delete what's there and put the new data on, right? So we need to include this in our function that's going to get the new data each time. Well, let's clear the old data, let's get the new data. Now the next thing is, and I always talk about this, we've already made a connection to our database. Up here we had cursor, make a connection and connect to the SQL database. We haven't said close that connection. So we're still talking to the database, right? We're still connected. So we don't need to reconnect again in this function. We're already connected. So all we have to do is say cursor.execute, execute a function to go and get the information from the database, right? So let's do this, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so what's my function? What's my execution? I want to go select team name, comma, wins, comma, losses. What am I doing? Come on. Losses, comma, points. And I want to select that from the teams table. And I want to sort it, because if you're looking at any leaderboard, you want to have it sorted by who's got the most points. So I'm going to order it by points and descending, right? So in other words, the highest point team or the highest point set of data will be at the top, the lowest point will be at the bottom. It descends down, right? So that's going to be the way that I want to collect the data. So I'm running this query on the database and I'm sorting it all in one go, right? So I'm going to sort that data, and then let's make a variable called teams equals whatever the cursor went and fetched. Fetch all in brackets. So it's not fetching one bit of information, it's fetching lots of information. So we say fetch it all, and let's put it into this little teams variable here just for the time being. Now we want to iterate through that teams variable, and we want to place all of that information onto the leaderboard in a similar way that we deleted everything on the leaderboard here. So let's go for teams, for team in teams. So for everything in teams, I could put X in here, I could put Y, I could put whatever, right? But let's put for team in teams. What are we going to do? We're going to go leaderboard, and instead of deleting this time, we're going to insert comma. So insert the data until you get to the end of the data, and the value values equal team. Okay, now let's explain this the best way that I can. Okay, you've created this variable called teams that's going to have, at the moment, it's going to have all of this information in it here from our original thing. It's going to have 5 different rows of information. And you're going to say, go through every single one, start with the inverted commas, which is going to be our name, our team name at the start, and go through until you get to the end of that row of the data. Till you get to the 3 bits, that's the end of that bracket, so that's the end of that row. Go through and do that, and then that will count as your first iteration through the team. Then go through and do the next one, then go through and do the next one, then go through and do the next one. So that's what this values team is. That counts as our first loop through the team, right? So that's the way that that's going to work, and that's going to iterate through that and make sure that that's done. Now, in theory, that should be it for the loading the leaderboard. You're deleting everything that's currently on the leaderboard. You're running a function on the server to go and get on the database to go and get the information, and then you're inserting it back onto the databoard. So that's it. In terms of loading your leaderboard, loading the information on, that's it for the function. Now, let's go through and think about what else we might need to do. Let's save this first, right? Let's go File, Save As, and let's call this on the desktop. Let's call this sports table. Okay, let's go save for that .py. Save. Okay, what else we want to do? We want to add more teams. Right, we want to somehow add more teams. Right, so let's do that as well. Okay, it's not going to be in the function, so I need to return back. I'm going to put a couple of lines in. In fact, let's put in a comment here. So we're going to add new teams and scores. Okay, so let's add new teams and scores. Let's do an input frame. Okay, so you know how we used a frame before to make our table. Let's just make a new frame here. We're going to call input frame Tkinter frame with a capital F. We're going to put it in the main window. We're not putting it inside that other one. We're going to put it in the main window, and let's give it a background. And because we're using TK, not TTK, we're just putting BG instead of the word background. we want to use this color. Okay, so we've created a new frame. Now, let's place that frame on the screen. Input frame. So this is just going to be a box where we put our input information into to add a new team, right? Let's pack that, and let's pack that 20 pixels down from where we've just had our table. So this will be below our table, right? So in other words, to this point here, we've finished creating the table. We're going to have the table, we've done the style, we've got the information. If I ran the program right now, it'll play that table up on the screen, right? But down here, we're adding a new little section underneath the table where we can add new teams if we want to add new teams, all right? Now, I want to put a label in here, but I also don't want to type all of this out and waste the video time and waste your time. So let's just copy this table, this label I've already got here, and let's paste this down here. And let's change this label to call this team label, and it's going to be a TK label, and it's not going to be in a window, it's going to be in our input frame. So this is within the bounds of the input frame that we've just created, and the text on this is going to say team name. So this is asking you to put in new information, right? This is asking you to put in a new team. Essentially, you're going to add a new team, and let's have it with a blue background, and let's might as well have it with white writing. Okay, so now I've created a little label. Now this isn't the input box, this is just the label, right? This is the label that says team name, enter your new team name, right? So let's call this team underscore label dot pad. Do I want to pack it? Do I want to pack it? I want to have, I want to put this on a grid because, well, I want you to think about how this is going to look. You're going to want to have the team name here, the wins, the losses, and the points. So you want 1, 2, 3, 4 columns, but not a table like this where you're going to display things, 4 entry box columns, right? So I'm going to put this on a grid. And this, in fact, shows you a different way to do things too. So let's try and do that. Row equals 0, column equals 0, and let's go pad. We're going crosswards for this one, so we're going to go pad the x-axis by 5. Okay, so that's going to have the name. So we've put the name on the grid. Now we need the entry box next to that. So let's go team underscore entry equals tk dot capital ENTRY entry bracket, and we're going to place that in the input frame, and we need to now put that together. So let's go team underscore entry dot grid, and I want this next to this one here, right? So I don't want it on top of it, I want it next to where I've put the heading. So it's going to have team name, it's going to have an entry box next to it. So if I put it here, I want to have, do I want it next to it or under it? I might have it under it, right? So if I put row 1, I can put it under it, and then leave the same sort of space at the end there. Let's put it under it, right? So we have team name with the box under it where you enter your team name. I think that's probably going to be better. The other thing is I made a typo there, team name. Okay, now using that same structure, using that same format, team name on a grid with an entry box under it, we want to do exactly the same for the wins, and we want to do exactly the same for the losses. So we can make this much, much quicker here. If I just highlight all of that, Command C, let's put in some comments in here. This one's going to be wins. This one's going to be losses. And then this one, you could either do the maths and work this out yourself, or you could just put in the points. For the purpose of this, I'm just going to put in the points. Right, now I'm going to paste that section in under all 3 of them. And then I'm just going to make the quick changes to make that work, right? So the first one I had team name, and then I had a box, and it was in row 0, row 1, column 0, column 1. Now I want these ones next to them in the next column, but I also want them on the same row as that, right? So row 0, column 1. This will be row 1, column 1. This will change to wins, and everything else should stay the same. Yep, I think that's right. I think everything else should stay the same there. I don't really need to change anything else there, do I? No, I think that's right. Maybe I could put some width to my entry box in here. Yeah, let's do that just for the purpose of showing you how to do different things. Width equals 10. Oh, yeah, in the width equals 10. Let's do that there, right? Okay, so I've just added a little bit of width to the entry box. I made the box a little bit bigger, right? I made the size of this box a little bit bigger. Okay, now let's get to the losses. Let's change this. Did I change the name there? No, I didn't, right? So this one is, that's it. Oh, that's wins, that's right. This is losses. And this one's going to be points. Okay, now I want to, essentially, I want to put this into the next column, the wins. I want it on the same row.
Sir, is this 4.16?
Nope. 4.14. Okay, now I want to put this into the same rows but different columns, right? So row 0, this one's going to be in column position number 2. This one's going to be in column position number 2. I also want to have the same width that I added in here. So let's put that same width that I added in there. And then let's put the same width that I added in there. And this one's going to be in column 3, column 3. Now, I'll explain this again why I just did those columns and how that works. As I said, I want to have it lay out across the screen where it says something like, I could nearly even just draw it here as an example to show you. Team name, right? And then I want it to say across the screen a bit further, wins, across the screen a bit further, losses, across the screen a bit further, points, and then under that, there'd be an entry box here, an entry box here, an entry box here, and an entry box here. So you can see, because I want that structure, I've got my team name, which is this heading here, and I've got it in row 0, column 0, right? So row 0 going across, column 0 going down. Then the next one is going to be in column 1. The next one's going to be in column 2. The next one's going to be in column 3. And this row here becomes row 1, row 1, row 1, row 1, because remember this is row 0, right? So this is going to be row 1 would be underneath it, okay? So that's what these columns and rows are. Padding gives you space between each of them. I'm putting pad by 5 in between each of them, and the width of 10 is going to be the width of the actual size of the box that you can enter information into, right? So that's how I've done the points and the way that's going to work. Now, if you're going to enter all of this information in, we definitely need to have some sort of function that enters information. We've got this function that returns information. We're going to have a function that enters information. So we need to define a new function. We're going to call it add team. So we can add a new team to our database. And we're going to have to get the information that they've put into these 4 columns. Now, because we've set this up, I've made a few little mistakes here, and I just saw them now that I'm thinking about how to add this function. I've seen them. Here is our team name, and first of all, I've got a mistake there, so that needs to be an underscore. That's going to be called team entry. This is going to be called wins entry. This one has to be wins entry with the right underscore. Okay. And I need to change these from team label to wins label. And then this one needs to be wins label. All right, so this is where copying and pasting is good, but you just got to make sure that you cover all your bases and do it properly, right? Because otherwise I would have got that wrong. If I didn't think about how I was going to enter it into the database, then I wouldn't have thought about, oh yeah, I've got to change those entry box names, right? Losses, losses, and that needs to be an underscore, not a dash. Right, and then we need to have points as well. So this one needs to be points. This will make sense as to why I'm renaming these in just a second. Well, it makes sense. You want to have each one named correctly. I mean, that's the first reason. But also, when you're adding information to the database, you need to know where to find it, right? So we want points entry. Okay, so now I want to add to the database. And I need to create some variables to add to the database. But I've already kind of just done that, right? And which I'll explain in just a minute. So the first thing I want to add is I want to add the team name to the database. And where do I find that team name? Well, this is it. I find it from the team entry box, right? So that's why I checked the names here. I've got to find it from the team entry box. So I go down here and I say, right, get it from the team entry box, and we use what's called a get command. So the get will get whatever the user writes in there. So whatever the user when this user comes to this team entry box here, whatever they write in as the new team name, this will go and get that information. Now we're going to do the same for the wins, same for the losses, and same for the points, right? We're going to go and get all of that information. Now, is it quicker to copy and paste, or would it be quicker to just type this? Let's have a look. We're going to get wins name. No, we're just going to call this wins. So this is where it would have been quicker, Neil, to just write it. Losses, points. Okay, and this is going to be from the wins entry. This is going to be from the losses entry, and this is going to be from the points entry. Right, so I've created 4 variables based on what the user has entered, right? So whatever information the user's entered for their new teams, we've created those, right? Now, let's just make sure that they did enter some information, that they didn't just hit enter by accident. So let's say if team underscore name, which is my new variable, is exactly equal to nothing, let's return. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to try things, right? So let's go try wins equals an integer in bracket wins. We're going to do losses equals an integer in bracket losses, and we're going to go points equals an integer in bracket points. This will all make sense in just a second. And let's say accept a value error colon print wins comma losses and points must be numbers, full stop, close inverted commas, whoops, and let's go return. Okay, now what this whole section does here is it validates the data. So the first one is, it says, if the team name is blank, then just return to where you were. We're not going to enter any data. It's not going to work. Just don't run the SQL code that enters information into the database. It just didn't work. They didn't enter the right team name in. And this also says the same thing. Check to see if the wins are integers in the wins input box. Check to see in the losses input box if they're integers, if their points are integers. If they're all correct, we're going to move ahead. But if not, we're going to print wins, losses, and points must be numbers, and we're going to return back to the main screen. So all of this is to check that valid data has been entered into those 4 boxes that we've just created above. Now, if the data is valid, then we want to insert it into the database, right? And we already know how to insert things because we go cursor.execute, and we want to do our brackets with our 6 inverted commas, and we want to run a SQL function. Now, obviously, we want to insert into, in fact, we might even have this code written further up, but let's just do it again. Insert into teams, the team underscore name, comma, the wins, comma, the losses, comma, the points. And where are we going to insert it? We're going to insert the values. Sure, I've written this further up already, but anyway, 2, 3, 4, comma, space, comma, space, comma, space. And where are we getting these values from? We're getting these values from the 4 variables that we just made, which is going to be team name, underscore name, comma, wins, comma, losses, comma, points, 2 brackets, close. Okay, so that's the function that'll execute, that'll put that information into the database. I'm going to commit that information. Okay, now, after we've done this, so in other words, we've created this new section here where the user can add more information, they can add new things. It checks to see whether the data is correct. If the data is correct, it inserts it into the database. The next thing we would need to do is then clear those boxes, because you don't want that information left in those empty white boxes. You want them empty. So we want to clear those boxes, and we want to clear them from the start of the box to the end of the box, wherever that end of that box might be, however much information they've put in. So that's the team entry, and you can't say clear the first 10 pixels or whatever, or first 10 characters, because you don't know how long those names will be. So we just go to the end of that box, right? All right, so we're clearing the team box, we're clearing the wins box, we're clearing the losses box, and we're clearing the points box. Okay, so we're clearing all of those boxes out, and that should be the end of our function. Now, the only last thing I think we need to do is we need to have a button that says, click this button to run this function, because at the moment, we've created this great new function that's going to add information, but the function's never called. No one actually asks it to run, right? So we need to have a button that's going to enter that information. Is that all we need to have? Yep, that'll do. Let's just go add underscore button. Okay, so we're going to add a button. It's going to be a TK button. Now you can stylize this button in Tkinter as much as you like, but it's not great. Stylising things in normal Tkinter is not great, so you might go TTK button, and then you might get a more interesting button to stylise if you want to do that. The button we're going to put in the window, and let's give it some text. The button's going to say add team, comma. Now, probably the most important thing here is the command, and the command is going to equal to running our function, and our function is called add team. Okay, so that's probably a most important thing that we need to add there. We could give it a background color. Oh, I'm not going to worry too much with colors and all that sort of stuff. Let's just add a button. Let's make our button have some width to it. So let's go pad X equals 25, pad Y equal to 12. Let's make it have, when your hand's over it, when the cursor goes over it, it should look like maybe a hand. What else do we want to do? That'll do. The button, you can add a whole pile of different features here to the button, and in a minute we'll have a look at it and see what the button looks like, and maybe we'll change it, but at this stage I'm not too concerned about how the button looks, right? We're going to pack this onto the page. We want to move it down from where those things were, so let's pad the y-axis by 10. Now we will need to make sure that we pack everything. So let's leaderboard. We want to pack that. Let me see, what else have we got up here that we need to pack? Oh, okay, so we haven't called this function either. So we need to, if we need to load if we're going to pack the leaderboard, we better then load that function. Load underscore leaderboard. Okay, so this leaderboard pack draws the leaderboard on the screen. This load leaderboard runs the function which then fills up the information on that screen. And then we need to run the main page like so, and then we need to close our connection to the database because we don't want to leave that connection to the database open. So that actually should be all of it. Let's save that and see how that runs. I'm sure there'll be typos, I'm sure there'll be errors, but let's have a little look here. Let's go run module. There we go, invalid syntax straight away. Team values, that should be a underscore, right? Save that, run it again. Okay, so during this little section of video, there's a few little typing mistakes and a few things that didn't work, right? So the idea here is that you do your alpha testing where you go through and every single section that you find a mistake in, you go through and fix. Now, what I had actually done is I'd spelt the word column incorrectly and then I'd copied and pasted the word column about 6 times incorrectly further down. So I'm spending my time here going through. I've sped the video up. You'll see it keeps coming up saying, oh, there's an error in the word column here, there's an error in the word column there, and I go through and I find those mistakes. I've intentionally left this in the video because I think it's important that you troubleshoot and that you go through and you find these typos and you find these mistakes. There's no mistakes here in terms of the functionality and the way the program works. They're mistakes in terms of typing mistakes, they're typo mistakes. There is a little mistake coming up in the next section of the video which I've left in at normal speed for you to watch because it's something that's important. You need to make sure that you include this next section in your program to make sure it works correctly. Okay, so now we should be right. Save that, run it again. Did you mean TK? TH line 133. I put TH instead of TK. 133. I meant to be TK there. Save. Let's run it again. Did you mean TK? Line 146. Again, copy and paste. If you copy and paste something wrong, you're going to copy and paste it wrong 5 times. TK here, TK, right, save, run module. Okay, now this time it has run correctly, and now all of that talking and stuff we can go back and look at it and say, okay, now I understand how that's laid out. Now I understand how it works. Right. So, for example, let's go through and look at our table. Here's my heading right at the very top, right? So we did that in the very first section here. There's our heading. Then we had a tree view, and the tree view is this, the view where the columns go down from within this window. I talked about a frame. See this thin white line around the outside here? That's the frame that we created. Now, I talked about the headings and the names that went in here, and I said to you, we're going to style these with white writing inside the actual table, but black writing in the heading. So here, inside the table, white writing, and the heading actually has black names, okay? Then I also talked about this sitemap where I roll over something. When you select something, the background changes. So there it is, where I roll over, the background color changes to show which column that I'm looking at, right? So that's the style map section in here. With the leaderboard section, our leaderboard is here and it's correct. As it is, it sits nicely, that's correct. You'll notice that it's a different order to how we entered the data. So we entered the data, the team with the highest points were the Eagles, but it was the third thing entered. But I said sort in descending. And so now it's descending, the Eagles have the most points, so we've got them, it's descending that way. This is the tree view, like I said, this is the style for that. And then we've got scores, right? Now, we might want to input scores. And I said if we want to input new scores, here's our names, team name, wins, losses, points. They're in the first row, first column. Or in fact, it's called row 0, column 0. Row 0, column 1, row 0, column 2, row 0, column 3. we've got input boxes underneath, and you'll notice these 3 boxes are shorter than the main team input, and then we've got our button down here. Now we need to test this, right? We need to make sure that this works. So we may come up with a new team, and we're going to call these ones the dogs. We've got all other animals, let's call them the dogs. And the dogs can have 7 wins, and they can have 1 loss. 3 sevens are 21 points. Let's go add team. Now I've got an error, which is not bad. I'm happy about that. It says point, did you mean points at line 190? So I go back to my code and I say points, that there should be an S. So I'm going to hit save. I'm going to run it again. And when I run it again, same thing's not on there. So I'm going to go dogs. And I'm going to say wins are going to be 7. Losses are going to be 1. 3 sevens, 21 points, add team. I got another error, right? So I've got a syntax error somewhere that says colon name, right? And it says colon name on line 196. There, it was supposed to be an underscore. So I save again, try and run it again. This is testing, right? It's called alpha testing. This is why you do it, right? Dogs, wins, 7, losses 1, points 21, add team. Okay, so now when I click the add team button, it seems to have added the team. I didn't get any error messages down here, but I'm not seeing the updated leaderboard. And the reason that is I haven't called this reload leaderboard function. I haven't told it to reload the leaderboard. So I'm just going to copy this section of text here, and I'm going to go down into my add team. So we add the team, we get the information, we put it in, we add it into the database. What I haven't said for it to do is to then load the leaderboard. I want to see the actual leaderboard. So here, I need to actually add that little function in there saying, all right, I've added this new team. Let's load the leaderboard in, the new team's leaderboard. Let's load that in. Okay, so I think now everything should be fine. I know I could have cut this video and deleted out a lot of those, oh, I've made a typing mistake, I've made errors, that sort of stuff. But I think it's really important that you see when there are errors, how you address them and how you fix them. So I'm leaving all of that junk in. And I'm sorry if that makes the video longer, but it actually should help you also with your improving the way that you write code and things. So let's run this program again. And when I run it, it comes up on the screen. And you can see this time it has actually done it because the first time it runs, it loads the leaderboard. But let's do it correctly to make sure that it works. So if we've got dogs in there, let's put in a team called cats. And the cats can have maybe only 4 wins, so they should be on the bottom of the leaderboard, and maybe they have 7 losses. And 3 fours are 12, so they'll have 12 points, and let's go add team. And this time, because I put in that little line of load the leaderboard, cats instantly loaded in and the leaderboard's automatically there. So that's it. That's how we can make a leaderboard video, a leaderboard program in Python. The key to this is you're calling information from the database. Yes, you're adding information to the database as well, but that's how you would do it. Now, for the IB, especially for your internal assessment, you shouldn't only just be able to add. You should be able to append or edit or change some of this information. You should be able to delete a team. I've done all of that in one of my other videos that you guys can look up in the SQL section or the database section. And I think I even did in the video that was adding a Python file to a database. I think I showed you how to do all those deleting sections as well. But the purpose of this video was to show you how to do a table. All right, so that's what this is. I hope you enjoyed it.